Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're heading to Maine for a really close look at Acadia National Park.
Yeah, and it's not just about, pretty scenery.
No, not at all. We're looking at a landscape that shows this incredible contrast in time.
It really does. It's like deep time meets very immediate, very human challenges. You've got this 420 million year old granite.
Right, the pink stuff.
Exactly. And it's being managed right now with, 21st century plans for net zero emissions. It's complex.
Absolutely. And our sources today, they take you all the way from the ancient geological forces that actually built these mountains
Way back.
all the way through to the modern, really data-heavy strategies Acadia is using right now. Things like climate change, erosion, even just dealing with massive crowds.
So our goal here is to pull out the key insights for the listener.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to understand the sort of unique geology,
Mm-hmm.
the incredible foresight and philanthropy that saved it, and also the very modern, intensive management it takes to handle, about 3.5 million visitors a year.
Yeah, 3.5 million. That's a huge number. It's a massive job. So, okay, let's start at the beginning. Let's unpack a landscape forged by deep time.
Okay.
If we go way, way back, say 500 million years ago, what was happening under the Iapetus Ocean that kind of set the stage?
Right, so the basement, the bedrock story, it starts with some pretty serious ancient violence.
Yeah.
You had this microcontinent called Avalonia.
Not originally part of North America?
No, completely separate. And it basically just slammed into the edge of Proto-North America. Geologists call it the Acadian orogeny.
And I assume that collision generated just unbelievable heat and pressure.
Oh, absolutely. Enough to transform the existing sedimentary rocks into something new. That's the Ellsworth schist we find there. It's metamorphic, the oldest unit.
And all that heat and friction, did that melt rock, lead to magma?
It did. It generated a huge magma chamber deep down. And as that slowly cooled over a long time, it solidified into the granites we see today on Mount Desert Island.
Including the famous pinkish-gray Cadillac Mountain granite.
That's the one. Formed about 420 million years ago. It's really the backbone of the park.
But there's a bit of a paradox here, isn't there? I mean, this granite is incredibly hard, seems permanent.
Right.
But the forces that made it also kind of built in weaknesses.
Precisely. It created things called shatter zones, fissures, cracks. Essentially, weaknesses within the massive structure. So even as it formed, it was being prepped, you could say, for erosion later on. It shows how geology is this constant cycle, creation and destruction built in together.
It really is the long game. Okay, so the granite formed deep down, but it didn't get its current shape, those rounded peaks, until much more recently, geologically speaking. Let's talk about the ice, the Wisconsin glaciation.
Yeah, the big ice sheets. Over the last, say, 2 to 3 million years, these glaciers, maybe a mile thick, acted like enormous sandpaper.
Just grinding everything down.
Exactly. Smoothing off the jagged peaks into the rolling hills you see today, carving out those distinctive U-shaped valleys.
And leaving scratches, right. You can still see them.
Oh, yeah. Glacial striations, deep gouges in the rock surface.
Yeah.
Clear evidence.
And maybe the most dramatic feature left by the glaciers.
It has to be some sound. It gets right into Mount Desert Island. And it's the only real fjord on the entire U.S. East Coast.
A true fjord, carved by ice.
Yep. That deep U-shaped inlet is pure glacial sculpting, a direct signature.
Okay, let's shift from the rock itself to the life it supports. Acadia is known as this meeting point, right, where different ecological zones come together.
It really is an ecological crossroads. You get plants and animals you'd normally find further south along the Atlantic coast, meeting species that are more typical of the Canadian Maritimes. Further north, it creates this amazing biodiversity in a pretty small area.
Which explains why Cadillac Mountain, for instance, has so many rare plants, like that alpine blueberry.
Right, the alpine blueberry is a great example. It's basically clinging on at its only low elevation spot in all of Maine, right there on Cadillac.
And the coastline itself, that hard granite shaped by the glaciers.
Yeah, that creates a really specific harsh environment, the intertidal zone. It's tough living, but it supports this whole community of life adapted to the pounding waves and tides, barnacles, snails, mussels.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've got the deep time geology. Now let's pivot to the story of stewardship, the human side of Acadia, and we have to start with the first people there.
Absolutely. For thousands of years, over 12,000 years actually, this was Wabanaki homeland, the Maliseet, Micmac, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot peoples.
And they had their own name for the island.
They did. Pemetic means range of mountains. They lived seasonally, used incredible birch bark canoes, We find evidence of their lives, like shell middens, near some
Wow.
sound.
But then came European colonization and eventually the national park. And that history is complicated, right? Displacement, exclusion.
It is. The creation of the park, like many early conservation efforts, involved displacing indigenous people, and the early National Park Service often banned traditional Wabanaki practices. That's a critical part of the story.
Has that changed at all? What's the situation now?
There has been a shift, yes. It's slow, but significant. In 2015, a policy change allowed federally recognized tribes to resume harvesting certain plants, like sweetgrass, inside the park.
So a move towards collaboration.
Yeah, the language now is more about preservation in collaboration with original stewards. It's an ongoing process, but it's a definite change from the past.
That's important context. Now, thinking about the park's founding, you really can't talk about Acadia without talking about George B. Dorr, the father of Acadia.
No, you really can't. Dorr was incredible. He basically dedicated his entire life and his family fortune to buying up land on Mount Desert Island to protect it.
And there was a key moment, wasn't there? Something involving the Maine legislature.
Yes, that was pivotal. He'd set up a private trust to hold the land, but the state legislature tried to revoke its nonprofit status. Dorr fought them and won.
And that battle convinced him.
It convinced him that private protection wasn't enough. It wasn't permanent. The land needed federal protection, something irrevocable.
And he pushed hard for it.
Relentlessly. And it worked. President Wilson created Sieur de Meaux National Monument in 1916.
Which then became Acadia National Park just a few years later, 1919, and Dorr stayed on.
He did. He served as the first park superintendent, unpaid, right up until 1944. An amazing commitment.
Truly. But he wasn't the only major player in shaping the park we know today. John D. Rockefeller Jr. had a massive impact, too, with the carriage roads.
Ah, yes, the carriage roads. 45 miles of them built between 1913 and 1940, all financed by Rockefeller.
And his motivation was interesting. He really disliked cars, right?
Vehemently. He saw them as noisy, smelly intrusions. So he funded this incredible network of motor-free byways purely for horse-drawn carriages, walkers, cyclists later on.
They're beautifully engineered, aren't they? Not just simple paths.
Oh, they're masterpieces.
Yeah.
3 layers of crushed rock for drainage, stone culverts, and 16 unique bridges, each faced with local granite so they just blend right into the landscape.
It's kind of ironic, though. His vision was sort of backward-looking, preserving carriage travel.
Right. Trying to hold back the tide of the automobile.
But today, those very roads are seen as this brilliant solution for managing modern traffic and providing recreation.
It's a fantastic paradox. And they're still meticulously maintained today, thanks to a public-private partnership called Acadia Trails Forever.
An endowed system.
Exactly. It's actually seen as a national model now. Shows how historic infrastructure, if you invest in it, can tackle modern problems.
Which brings us neatly to those modern problems. Let's talk about navigating the modern paradox. Crowds, thrills, and tranquility. Acadia is incredibly popular.
It really is. Consistently in the top 10 most visited national parks in the U.S. And that popularity creates real pressure, especially in certain spots.
Cadillac Mountain being the prime example, I imagine, particularly for sunrise.
Oh, absolutely. It used to be chaos up there. Major overcrowding, safety concerns, just too many cars trying to get to the summit at once.
So how do they handle that now? You can't just close the mountain.
They implemented a vehicle reservation system. It started phasing in, but was fully required as of 2021, running seasonally from May through October.
Okay, so if you, the listener, want to drive up Cadillac, what do you need to know?
You need a reservation for your vehicle, either for a sunrise slot or a daytime slot. They release about 30% of them 90 days out,
Okay.
and the other 70% become available just 2 days ahead of time. So you have 2 chances to get one.
But what if you don't drive? If you hike or bike?
Then you're golden. No reservation needed if you arrive under your own power, which is a nice incentive, really.
Yeah, it encourages people to experience it differently.
Yeah.
But Acadia isn't just scenic drives. It's also famous for some pretty intense, high-difficulty trails. The ones with the iron runs.
Oh, yeah, the iron rung routes. They're
Yeah.
legendary. The most famous is probably the Precipice Trail.
Describe that one.
It's about a 2.1-mile loop, but it involves climbing nearly 1,000 feet, pretty much straight up an exposed cliff face, using iron rungs and ladders. It's challenging.
Definitely not for everyone. And there's an important closure to know about, too.
But crucial, yes. The Precipice Trail is closed every year from roughly March into mid-August
Why is that?
to protect nesting peregrine falcons. They nest right on those cliffs, so the closure is non-negotiable during breeding season.
Good to know. Is there a slightly less terrifying alternative?
Yes, the Beehive Trail. It's shorter, also has runs and some exposure, but it's often considered a good warm-up for precipice. Still thrilling, but maybe a bit less intense.
Okay, so you've got the crowds on Cadillac, the thrills on Precipice. But what if you're looking for actual peace and quiet in Acadia? Where should you go?
Generally, you want to head away from the main Park Loop Road, explore the western side of Mount Desert Island, around towns like Southwest Harbor. It's noticeably calmer.
And the sources also really highlight the Scudic Peninsula.
Definitely. That's the only part of the park actually on the mainland.
Takes about an hour to drive there.
Yeah, roughly an hour from the main part of the park. And that distance acts as a natural filter. Scudic gets less than 10% of the park's total visitors.
Wow, less than 10%.
Yeah. And it offers totally different views back towards Cadillac Mountain. Plus, Scudic Point is probably the best place in the whole park for exploring tide pools.
I also love reading about Little Hunter's Beach. Sounds like a real hidden gem.
It is. It's got this unique cobblestone beach, geologically rare for the area, and the stones make this amazing rattling sound as the waves move them.
And the key is limited parking, right?
Exactly. Only a few cars can park there, so it naturally stays pretty uncrowded. You have to be a bit persistent to find it and get a spot.
A reward for the effort. Okay, that leads us perfectly into the final big theme, adapting to a changing world. Because managing crowds is one thing, but the park faces much bigger existential threats.
Absolutely. Climate change is hitting Acadia hard. It's really on the front lines, and thankfully the park has been collecting data for a long, long time, since 1916 in some cases.
So we have solid numbers. What are they showing?
The trends are clear and worrying. Average temperatures have already gone up by about 3 degrees Fahrenheit since 1890.
Wow.
And projections show they could rise another 3 degrees by 2050. We're also seeing the growing season getting longer by more than 2 weeks already.
And the coast, that iconic granite meeting the Atlantic, how is that being affected?
Well, sea levels have risen about 8 inches since 1950. That means more coastal erosion, which directly threatens park roads, trails, facilities.
And cultural sites, too.
Yes, absolutely, including important Wabanaki heritage sites located near the coast. Plus, the ocean itself is warming and becoming more acidic.
Which impacts marine life.
Severely.
Mm.
Especially anything with shell mussels, clams, barnacles, some plankton. They struggle to build their shells in more acidic water, which messes up the whole food web.
Gosh, hearing all that, it sounds pretty overwhelming. Is there any area where the park is actually having marked success in managing these large-scale environmental challenges?
Yes, actually. And it's a really important success story. Invasive species management. So get this, nearly a quarter, about 25%, of all the vascular plant species found in Acadia are non-native, introduced from elsewhere.
That sounds bad.
It could be. But invasive plants, the really aggressive ones that take over, cover less than 1% of the park's forests and wetlands.
Less than 1%? How? That's incredible containment.
It's down to years of sustained effort and funding, great partnerships, especially with the Scudic Institute for Research, and critically, setting realistic goals. They focus on keeping invasive populations at a manageable maintenance level in key areas rather than attempting impossible park-wide eradication. It's strategic.
Smart management. And looking ahead, the park is also making some big investments in its infrastructure, focusing on sustainability and access.
Yes, a huge push right now. There's a new $32.6 million maintenance facility being built. It's designed for a 100-year lifespan.
Wow.
And aiming for net zero emissions. Plans include rooftop solar, EV charging stations. It's meant to be a model for sustainable park operations.
And they're also improving visitor access, right? Making things more inclusive.
Exactly. They're rebuilding the Hulls Cove Visitor Center. A big part of that is making the main entrance accessible at ground level.
Getting rid of those stairs. I read there were like 52 steps.
That's the number, yeah. Eliminating that barrier is huge. They're also improving accessibility at other key spots, like Sand Beach, and using the opportunity to repair recent storm damage at the same time.
So it's this integrated approach: sustainability, accessibility, resilience.
It really shows that modern conservation is about guiding change, adapting, and making sure these places work for everyone now and into the future.
So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for you, the listener? I think it's that Acadia serves as this powerful example of resilient conservation.
I agree. Its success isn't about stopping change, because it can't. It's about adapting intelligently
Using good science, like from the Scudic Institute, building strong partnerships, like the Trails Endowment.
and implementing smart management systems like the Cadillac reservations. It's about actively guiding the park's future.
Right. Knowing you can't freeze it in time, but you can manage the human impact and protect the core ecosystems.
That adaptive mindset is key.
Okay, let's leave you with a final thought to chew on. Remember how we talked about those ancient geological forces 420 million years ago, creating weaknesses, those shatter zones in the granite?
Setting the stage for erosion.
Exactly. Well, today, human activity, mainly through climate change, is creating entirely new kinds of pressures, accelerating change on that very same landscape.
A new kind of erosion, in a way.
So the question is, beyond the climate adaptations we're already seeing, what intentional human choices, what actions that we take now will shape the next century of Acadia's story? What legacy will we imprint on that ancient rock for future generations?